Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good morning to you all. Matthew Goodbun. I'm a senior privacy consultant with BSI, the British Standards Institution. So to paraphrase Troy McClure, you may be familiar with BSI from such offerings as our national standards body, the fact that we're a notified body, we offer training, testing, but perhaps not so much around our digital trust consulting, which is where I fit in, where our team fits in. So within digital trust, this is thinking about our environmental health and safety, our physical supply chain, and indeed the cyber risk advisory, the regulatory aspects, notified body, the AI notified body as well, so thinking about product and device certification, the training offerings across various different standards and different areas of regulation, the assurance in terms of the auditing and certification, and then again, in terms of the consultancy aspect of that as well. So when we talk about digital trust, got a definition there that we at BSI kind of work with. So digital trust is about instilling confidence in an organization that empowers the people, the systems, and the technology to ensure their safety, security, compliance, privacy, and ethical requirements. So not too much that we fit into this digital trust definition there, but that's the point here. You know, this trust aspect, the trust transformation, thinking about how valuable trust is to an organization, cuts across all of the different areas of an organization. This isn't just a cybersecurity, an information security, a privacy aspect. There are, this cuts across all of the different areas. The whole compliance ecosystem is reliant on digital trust. Your organizations are reliant on digital trust. Otherwise, that reputational damage, the financial damage, all of that follows is absolutely critical when you're considering what the appropriate levels of controls are, what the appropriate risk appetite is, what the risk criteria for the different aspects, the tactical, the strategic, the operational. It's really critical in shaping how an organization kind of thinks about its vision and moving forward with the digital advancements. You can get your bingo cards or your drinking games out, your AI, you're thinking about your shadow AI, that side of things as well, and all of the different things that may be coming in terms of that. Well, think of it as a seismic shift. Think of it as something that has been growing and all of a sudden is very kind of shiny and in the media because of ChatGPT. But AI isn't new, and I wouldn't imagine any of you sat here are really thinking about AI as a particularly new concern. It's just that because organizations and your employees are really starting to think about it and getting their hands on it because it's that much more kind of accessible, that aspect of it really is coming in. So, AI in the supply chain is another area of concern in terms of building that mapping, the management and the monitoring into your organization as you look to deal with this. So in terms of, mapping that personal data aspect with the supply chain, you could well imagine that, this is nothing new. This with GDPR, with the Data Protection Act that preceded that, thinking about where the data's going, who has access to it, whether that's routine access to it if it's an outsourced service, or if it's the potential for support and maintenance. Working with privacy, data protection, procurement, legal, this whole kind of compliance ecosystem to fully understand where the data's going, who has access to it, what locations, what type of risk based on what type of data. There's lots of different things to consider, and you've got an opportunity at that initial due diligence phase to really start to unpack that, to really start to document that. That's the opportunity with the contractual side of things, with the scheduler processing that lists out the sub-processors. There are things there within your organization and within your compliance and sort of privacy data protection framework that you can use to start to build that picture of your supply chain, and then that helps from the mapping perspective to assess, identify risks, and then put in the contractual protections, to put in the technical and organizational measures and make sure that your requirements flow down through that supply chain. So it's not only your third parties, but you're thinking about the fourth party element as well. So that list of sub-processors and Okta might be one to mention. They're very much embedded within many organisations, and in second time in a couple of years been impacted. And reports suggest that the reason for the root cause, or certainly a factor there, was outsourced customer support and not having appropriate controls around that for the authentication aspect, which then has allowed malicious actors to actually target that. And indeed, there are ransomware groups such as Clop that are specifically targeting supply chains and further down in that supply chain to increase their blast radius. So it's really key at that early stage, when you've got everyone involved and you're looking at those supply chain due diligence questionnaires and challenging them, getting that information. If someone has only partially completed it, or have sent it when it's not quite finished and it still says go ask Dave, that's your time to go and ask a bit more, dig a bit deeper, have a look at that supply chain based on the risk of the personal data. So you've got your citizen data, you've got customer client data, all valuable, but you've also got your employee data as well. And that's something that I do see within certain clients, certain industries, not actually thinking about, well, actually, we're using the supply chain, but we're only using it to protect employee data. There needs to be that consideration there in terms of the potential risk of harm, the amount of personal data that could be disclosed related to those kind of contextual risks for employees as much as for citizens and customers as well. So that mapping piece is a really important piece. Lots of stakeholders to consider when you're trying to build that in. So then we move to the operational phase. So we've gone, okay, we've gone and asked Dave, we've clarified that, we're happy with this supplier, we've worked with privacy and data protection, we've got our records of processing activity, we've listed out our suppliers there, we've got the sub-processors listed, we've made some inquiries, but that's, due diligence isn't one and done. There's the operational aspect of that, and that's something that kind of comes through within the standard, within NIST, within ISO 27001, and the 2022 iteration of that, and where the supply chain fits in that operation aspect. So 8.1 there, the organisation shall ensure that externally provided processes, products or services that are relevant to the information security management system are controlled. So that's not, well, we've listed them, we looked at them when we started, and they've gathered dust, and we've not done anything with them for the last 5 years. It's not something that you can do for all of them, but again, it's that risk-based prioritization, pragmatism when it comes to this is high-risk data, this is business critical, we need the uptime for this because of it's health data, and we need to make sure that that maximum acceptable outage is almost zero for certain things. So again, it's that pragmatism when you're looking at your supply chain. So thinking about it in terms of the supplier relationships, the supplier agreements, managing that supply chain, and then also that monitoring aspect as well. So Robin's already talked there about the threat intelligence piece, and we'll get to that, where that fits in terms of ISO 27001 as well. So really, it's how you can take steps and start. That's that's the key. You've got that opportunity when you've done your due diligence, when you've recorded things, the privacy and data protection aspect in terms of that record of process and activity. That record there shows where that supplier or where those suppliers interact with your personal data, and that is the opportunity then to go, is this high risk? Is this critical? What is the impact here? What's the likelihood? And really start to build an information security risk management program that really starts to consider these things and breaks it down, so that potentially that due diligence or some very bespoke kind of questionnaires, requirements or auditing requirements come through for your top 5%, or the ones that are managing the data that could have a serious risk of harm to individuals, where it to be disclosed. We think recently in the news around the 23andMe, the DNA side of things, and the fact that information for millions of individuals that picked up a DNA kit in Boots and thought it was a good Christmas present, all of a sudden now there's the potential implications that their data. They may now know that they're, a thousandth, related to a king or a queen, but their data is now out there. And it's about kind of understanding that risk from a professional perspective as much as it is from a personal perspective as well. So again, really like that point that Robin made around that, the pro-social aspect of it, the thinking about it and making it relevant to employees, to really resonate and think about not only the risk to an organization, but the risk of harm to individuals when it comes to the supply chain as well. So hopefully there's a big enough screen for this map, but again, you can see here from just a mapping, pointing out various different supply chain attacks across the world from 2022, clearly illustrating the impact that targeting the supply chain can have in terms of disruption. And again, this is where the compliance ecosystem comes in. It's not just about cybersecurity, it's not just about data protection, but you're thinking about the business continuity aspects of this as well, the disaster recovery, thinking about the criticality of access and integrity of that data. And if that's then taken out for whatever reason, what resilience do you have within your supply chain to bring that back? What is that disruption to your organization when you're calculating that when you're thinking about the requirements for a supplier and you're thinking about RTO and RPO and maximum tolerable data loss, all of these different acronyms that you can think of for business continuity as well as across cybersecurity. But there is a real need to think about, again, that not only the blast radius in terms of just how impactful it would be on the organization, but also how impactful it would be on individuals as well. So then we come to the threat intelligence aspect of this. Again, monitoring absolutely critical to this. It's not a one and done. It's not gathering dust, vendor security questionnaire or due diligence. This is thinking about that ongoing piece. What tools can you use? What controls are available? And again, there's plenty of vendors out there. There's lots of data that can be gathered. There's your open source intelligence that either you can be monitoring yourself with your teams, or you can be looking to automate or bring in solutions that can support that. It's really about thinking about what's proportionate to your organization, but proportionate to the risk related to that information as well, and making sure that fit is right. So again, it's about making sure there's awareness of that threat environment. So again, we think maybe about the file transfer impact on Go Anywhere and on Move It. We're talking, thousands of impacted customers and all of the potential personal data, sensitive data that may have been, shared as part of those file transfer sites. Now it's thinking about, okay, well, let's learn from that. We may not have been impacted by this particular supply chain breach, but what intelligence, what lessons can we learn from others so that we can build in proportionate controls that maybe we thought were okay, but given that there's now this shift, there's ransomware specifically focused on further down the supply chain and weighs in that backdoor into your organization and your networks. It's making sure that intelligence is relevant, insightful, contextual, and actionable. And it's making sure that you've got the expertise either in-house or outsourced to be able to sift that, to be able to work out what is relevant, what needs to be actioned, and with what urgency. So it's about considering the internal and external threats when it comes to that. So sort of trying to bring this in as to why this is critical and why you need to, if you're not already, or if you haven't done it enough, or maybe only it's a half mask rather than a full mask, why you need to start to really pull back that mask on your supply chain and really start to fully understand it, and why it's really key is because of all these different aspects. You need to understand what your supply chain footprint is to then understand what categories and volumes of personal data are being processed, as well as the commercial aspect as well. We've talked about the value of IP when it comes to the car industry. That will apply to from automotive all the way through every industry, and certainly with technology as well. There's a real kind of incentive here not to only think about this as a cybersecurity concern, but your chief risk officer, your chief operations officer, all of the key stakeholders really need to be thinking about how this impacts them. Chief finance as well. All of these. This isn't an isolated concern that yourselves in information security and cybersecurity can deal with alone. You really need to think about where that personal data is being transferred to or where it's accessible from. Again, not only in terms of that routine access where you've outsourced a service or there's a managed service, but also in terms of support and maintenance, and if there's any particularly sensitive data that maybe shouldn't be part of that service simply because of the risk and the fact that it could be accessed from from locations where data protection and security and the governance and the sort of the government around that location could introduce some additional risk. So that's where your transfer risk assessment, the transfer impact assessment comes in from a privacy and data protection perspective to really start to think about that aspect of it. And then when you've done the mapping, then it's really about thinking, managing that. How, what controls are you going to put in place? How that personal data will be protected by technical and organizational measures, and also the contractual and legal safeguards as well. So that's, you think of the different stakeholders within your organization that have a part to play and need to be involved when it comes to the supply chain. It's not just, one part of the compliance team sending out a due diligence questionnaire and giving it a glance and, off we go. You need to think about how much risk there is in the supply chain, how that's going to be managed, what tools are available, what resources, what solutions you may need to implement to build that in. And that really then helps you to establish your blast radius and put mitigations in place to manage and monitor that change in landscape. So if we just bring it back now to a less than watertight analogy, that trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. So when you're thinking about that digital trust element of that, the potential for getting supply chain due diligence wrong or disregarding a particular vendor or thinking about things in a way that maybe doesn't focus on the potential impact on personal data, there's real kind of risk there when it comes to the importance of it. So, I mean, by way of conclusion, maybe I would suggest the analogy of a dam. So you need to control the flow of data within your supply chain. Your supply chain is an extension that you're accountable for. You need to make sure that at the outset you're mapping it, you're doing the right level of due diligence, the right level of detail. You've got the right controls in place. Maybe that's through a management system or compliance with a particular framework. And then you've got that ongoing monitoring piece as well that really, ensures that if those things are changing, if there's a change to the amount of personal data within a processing activity and that supply is being used for a new purpose, that risk then gets revisited. So again, I will leave you with make sure that you give a damn about supply chain management by having a damn. So thank you.